Welcome to our collective calls that we hold on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hosting today's meeting, as always, Ivan and Malika. And we got two projects today to share the pitch deck, to answer the Q&A section. The usual drill. So let me introduce them real quick. Firstly, we got Abdallah, the Game Forest CEO, and also Anantha, representing MOI Protocol, MOI Network project. Correct me if I'm wrong. Two amazing projects today. So we got plenty of time for both of them. And let me walk you through the rules, how we usually hold such calls. So for the project, you have 5 minutes for the pitch part. We will set a timer. And also around 10 minutes later for the Q&A section. If you have any questions, just feel free to leave them in the chat somewhere below here. Or alternatively, just raise your hand. It'll be heard directly when we have a live conversation here. Thank you so much for coming again. And yeah, let's start. If you don't mind, Abdullah, you can be the first one. Game Forest, go ahead.
Let me start by introducing myself, and my partner will introduce himself too. So my name is Abdallah Ramadan. I am a game developer, and I'm also I have a background in computer science. I have worked in IT industry, and 10 years ago, Mariam-san, his company, he recruited me, and I worked in Japan, a Japanese game development company, and I got into game science since then, and I created my own indie titles. Also, I worked with Western companies creating games, VR, simulations, and stuff like that. And around 4 or 5 years ago, I got into blockchain and created the Game Forest. So right now, I will let Mariam-san introduce himself in Japanese, and then I will get back to you. Mariam-san, 自己紹介をどうぞ。
はい、私は丸山智弘と申します。日本で、15年間東京で、ゲームの開発会社カラクリズムを経営しています。今日は、ラマダンのピッチに、時間をくださって、機会をくださってありがとうございます。私の役割は、ラマダンのプロジェクトの中で、日本のゲーム会社を、ザ・ゲームフォレストに、招待したり、そこで、日本のゲーム会社の持っているゲームを、ザ・ゲームフォレストで展開したりすることが、私の役割です。そして、私自身の会社カラクリズムでも、ザ・ゲームフォレスト専用のゲームを開発することになっています。
So Mariam-san, he is the CEO of a game development company in Tokyo, established for over 15 years, and it has about 20 employees. And yes, so we created together the Game Forest. The Game Forest, it is a blockchain game store. So it's not a GameFi project, it's not a play-to-earn project, it's not meant for speculators. It is a game store like Steam or GOG or Epic Games Store that sells games. The only difference is that we prioritize the ownership of games. So what's the problem the Game Force is trying to solve? So we moved from physical distribution into digital distribution, right? Using Steam and PlayStation Network and stuff like that, and that's good, of course, because physical distribution is expensive and has a lot of barrier of entry for like indie developers and stuff like that. But as we moved from physical to digital distribution, we lost ownership of the games. We don't own a copy of the game anymore. We don't buy a copy of the game. We buy a license to play the game. So that's the problem. So we want to bring back ownership with the convenience of digital distribution through NFTs and technology. So every copy of the game is an NFT. This brings a huge value to, of course, gamers, because now they realize that they need ownership of the game, and also bring value to developers and publishers, because now they can set a number of copies that they are going to sell on day one. Physical distribution, there used to be a limit, right? They publish, for example, 1 million copies of the game on day one, but digital distribution is unlimited. Now they can set a number of copies to be sold, and this is going to be an advantage for them, because now players will buy a lot of copies on day one, because they will be afraid to miss out the release. So this is our project. We have a store, we are MVP that is working, people can buy the games on our store with connect their MetaMask wallet. So we have already passed this stage, and Mariam San, he has a lot of connections in the game industry, so we'll bring more games to the store. We are actually raising now $3 million at $15 million valuation to continue to grow our collection of titles. Yes, I think my mission now is done. So please go ahead. Yes.
Yeah, thank you guys. Thank you, team. Let's start the Q&A section. And we've got a question. How do you plan to convince traditional gamers to ditch the old school model and embrace this true ownership model for games?
Yes, as for gamers, I think they are already aware that they don't own the digital games and they will need a solution. Of course, there is a barrier to entry, of course, because they are not used to using crypto wallets and stuff like that. So we would use the funds to actually make it possible for them to use this store just like they use Steam or GOG by registering by their email and password and paying with their credit card. The only difference is that they can connect their wallet later and claim those games that he bought to his own private wallet and then resell it or give it to someone, or he can not do that and just make the games on the platform. So we will convince them by giving them low barrier to entry. If he knows nothing about crypto, it doesn't matter. It's just for him, it will be just a very easy to use interface. And if he's an enthusiast and he really loves ownership and he wants to own the NFT, he would connect his wallet and withdraw the NFT. So we will do this to convince players.
Okay, thank you. Maybe while we are waiting for questions to come, you can explain how do you plan to attract game developers to the platform?
Yes, so we actually will incentivize developers by giving them a prepayment from their game sales for the early adopters of our platform. So for example, it depends on the title, of course, and how big the developer is. So for example, if it is a Dendy developer, we give him okay, you get $10,000 to complete the development of this game, and then we will take this $10,000 back from the sales that you make from your game, and of course, if the game didn't sell, he would still be able to keep those $10,000. So that's going to be an incentive for them, and of course, it is a bigger title. It would be more. So this is one strategy that we are thinking of, and also we will make the cut 12% instead of 30%, and this is going to be more revenue, especially for developers like indie developers, and this will make a lot of difference to them. Yes, so we will follow incentive strategies to get more developers on our platform.
Okay, thanks. Do we have more questions?
Yes, I have a question. So Abdullah, what about DRM?
Yes, so one question that we get to after explaining this is that some publishers and developers are concerned about DRM, but we will actually develop DRM. We haven't developed it yet because our store is only web-based, but we'll create a desktop application like Steam, and then we will implement the DRM on it. And of course, it would be based on the NFT and the blockchain ownership, but it will be transparent for users who might not understand a lot about crypto. But yes, it's coming. And we'll also give options for developers who want their games to be DRM free. GOG is a very successful game store, and actually it's all the games on it are DRM free. So we will implement the option for developers to add DRM to their games, and we'll give them the option also to not implement DRM for their games.
Okay, thank you so much for the question. And what about the competitors? So could you elaborate on the competition field here?
Well, I as far as I'm aware, I don't think we do have any direct competitors to what we are doing, because most blockchain gaming projects are doing something different. For example, GameFi project or play-to-earn projects is very different from what we are doing, and it's very different from what traditional games is about, because people are gamers are used to pay money to play games and have fun. The games is not something that they play to earn, right? We are not trying to do anything really different. We are just want things to be the traditional way, but we are just using that NFT technology to make this happen to make this traditional thing happen in the digital distribution era. I don't think we do have any direct competitors to what we are doing right now.
Okay, thanks for explaining that. We got a question as well in the chat, so let me read that as well. With secondary sales royalties, how do you ensure that developers get fair compensation while keeping the marketplace player driven?
Yes, thank you. So this is actually very important, and we will implement royalties on our store for players who choose to resell their games on our store. Okay, we will not enforce the royalties for gamers who want to sell outside of our store, because they own the game. They have the right to resell their game outside of our store. But if he use our store, we will get a cut from this sale as a royalty, and then of course the royalties that the Game Force would collect from secondary sales, we will get 12% of them, and the rest of that will go to the original developer and publisher. Yes, so this will actually be beneficial to also the developers and publishers, because they will get a constant revenue stream even after they sell the initial copies of the games, and we will provide a very convenient store for players so that we incentivize them to use our store for trading and stuff like that, through making it safer and better than alternatives here.
Thank you for answering this. And we got last question. That's all time we have, but surely I will read that apart. So it goes like this. Didn't really listen to the first part of the pitch, but seems to be an interesting concept indeed. By the way, in a space that's changing so fast, what do you see as the next big step for Game Forest after launching the marketplace?
Yes, thank you very much. I'm happy to hear this. And yes, so we want. I think the biggest challenge is to get a lot more games on our store. So those are our biggest steps, and I think that our model allows us to do this quickly, because we are not requiring any kind of like tokenomics or anything for developers to put their games on our store. If they have a single player game, it is an NFT. We just get it. He just give us a copy of the game, and we upload it, and now he's done. He doesn't have to implement any kind of tokenomics or think about this, because most game developers, it's challenging for them to understand all of this, right? So yes, that's our biggest challenge. That's our biggest step, and I think we can tackle this because we are giving them a very low barrier to entry to developers, because we don't require them to implement any kind of blockchain related stuff in their game.
Okay, guys, thank you so much for being here on the call. Appreciate that. Guys, that was Game Forest, and yeah, thank you so much, guys, for being here on the call again. We're moving on, and we got second project to share the pitch deck, answer the Q&A. So guys, welcome Anantha, founder of MOI Protocol, MOI Network. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. Passing the mic to you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, so my name is Anantha Krishnan. I'm the founder of MOI Protocol. Maybe my introduction is I'm probably here one of the few people from Web 0 to Web 3. So I was part of the initial team which built the Oracle database, and I was with Accenture and Anderson for a long time, ran their analytics practice, and got and excited about back into technology in 2017 when the whole decentralization boom took over. And what we are bringing to the world is something called context chains, which is a new kind of an architecture on how blockchains work. And it's primarily driven towards a real world adoption. And let's all agree, blockchain has been fantastic, but it kind of doesn't work for the real world. And And let me explain you why it is and what we can do about it. So why isn't blockchain mainstream yet? Limited use cases. If you look at most of the use cases are centered on DeFi, which is primarily global assets and payments, fragmented chains, divided liquidity, and complex user experience. And so let me try to explain why this happens with some examples. Today, if you're going to go buy purchase of coffee at Starbucks and pay for it, or use the same chain to go buy a house in Beverly Hills, the same kind of user experience. So you don't have differentiated user. Real world doesn't operate like that. Say you want to do build a decentralized AI model or transfer a token. Same kind of user experience, same kind of resources. They're not differentiated. Real world doesn't operate like that. For example, if you want to build an application in blockchain today, which is one application wants to be GDPR compliant, another application wants to be CCPA compliant, meaning their data needs to be stored in different places on the same chain, not possible. All resources need to come for all interactions. So primarily the problem is a one-size-fits-all model. And the answers has been shard chains, side chains, rollups, and I think I'm hearing L4s now already. So your assets are all over the place. You have fragmented liquidity and complicated user experience. So real world really doesn't operate like this. And why is this happening? Not truly user-owned assets. What I mean by that is, while we claim yes, blockchains are today fundamentally app-centric, smart contract-centric. Your assets are held in a smart contracts. It's not held at the level of Ivan or Malika. So if I have 10 assets, they're in 10 different smart contracts in 10 different chains. And so obviously interoperability and safety is a challenge. Global consensus bottleneck, because there is only one ledger, one global consensus. While all your assets are user-centric and all your interactions are user-centric, obviously that leads to chain fragmentation. So you can't scale beyond a certain number of nodes. So you need to create multiple chains. And then static state management. For example, the kind of price, performance, and risks you want to do for the coffee transaction, the same thing that you need to do for any other transaction, like a high-value transaction, primarily because it doesn't have any idea of context or intelligence. Finally, centralizing Sybil resistance. Whenever you have side chains, you get centralized rollups, you get centralized. So obviously, centralization threatens reliability and democracy. So what have we done? We have introduced something called context chains with this blockchain with embedded intelligence. So it's not a blockchain for AI, it's blockchain with AI inside it. So first thing we have done is we have made the state management participant-centric, built-in intelligence. So for example, the right number of resources and the right type of resources can come for the right kind of interaction. So for a coffee transaction could be a lot more riskier transaction, while your Beverly Hills purchase transaction could wait for 3 days, as in real world, and get completed with all kind of checks. And then human-centric Sybil resistance, which solves this problem. And so the idea is we have one flat network in which we can build all of this so that we don't have this issue. So how have we done this? Very quickly, we have built all components have been rebuilt, a new data structure, a new consensus, which is massively parallel, new message-oriented state management, so you don't have to go to the smart contract all the time. Like the way you call in database call today, you can make that call from your existing Web2 environment. So and what can we build with this? We can build traditional TradeFi to say from Web2 to Web3, ideal for DePIN and DCOM application, which requires real-time matching and decentralized AI. Developer adoption, simple state management, no new language to be learned. All our existing developers are already part of the community. So that makes the adoption very easy. So we already have 2,000 plus nodes. We are planning 100,000 nodes, and we have been in 3+ years of development, and we have spent our own money of about $6 million to bootstrap. We're looking for everyone to participate in this. So in any way, fashion you want, community building, app development, node hosting, and of course, an investment option.
Thank you so much for the pitch part. Now to Q&A. We already received a couple of questions, so let me read them straight away. So the first one goes like this. You've got a low-code, no-code framework for developers. How to make sure it's not just accessible, but actually delivers a real competitive edge over other blockchain solutions?
Yeah, so we the competitive edges, we have got a new state machine technology called interaction state machine. I'll tell you how it works. Today, you gotta the consensus is one consensus, so it's not a peer-to-peer consensus. So if you from an from an existing front end, if you want to call the smart contract today, to execute any state management, you have to call a smart contract, and the smart contract needs to achieve consensus. So there is no way of just executing pure interaction like a message, like the typical ODBC call that happens in databases. So it's a fundamentally new way of doing state management where every call is got its own consensus happening. So that's a fundamental breakthrough. So that's the competitive advantage we have.
Thanks for explaining the first question. We got 2 more questions as well. So you're building a 1 million node value network. What's the biggest challenge you faced so far in scaling this up and making it sustainable long term?
The 1 million node value network is the goal. So the biggest challenge that obviously the technology challenge of scaling to 1 million nodes is one that I think probably we have reasonably solved. But the larger challenge is to get 1 million people to be part of it. So I think that's the larger challenge. So there the issue is not just about technology, it's all about Sybil resistance. What I mean by that is if you have to get 1 million normal people to be part of it, so you can't have 32 ETHs to be staked. Nobody can be part of such a system. So how do you build in Sybil resistance mechanism where you can have 1 million different people be part of it and still be secure and safe? And that was the tougher part for us to solve. And we have solved that by using something called a proof of context, which does not just take money into consideration when you stake. It takes into people's reputation and behavior in the network, and money is just a very small P&L element, so that allows more people to participate. So to get to the 1 million nodes, we are fairly sure that we have solved the technology, but the community growth would be the more tougher part.
Yeah, totally. And the third question goes like this. Thank you for the pitch. The whole blockchain space is still evolving. How do you see context change overcoming the limitations of traditional chains when it comes to real-time, hyper-local use cases?
Yeah, the real-time hyper-parallel use cases are today not possible, primarily because you have one ledger and one consensus. So let me give you an example. So if today we were able to want to build an Uber-like application on blockchain, right? So it's an parallel application. So people at a global level, because there's a single ledger and it's not participant-centric. Potentially a person who's hailing a cab in San Francisco will block out a person who's hailing a cab in New York. So because it's not parallel. So that's a problem. And so what we have solved is those two things can happen in parallelly. So that's possible because there are multiple consensus happening dynamically based on each interaction. And that's how we solve it. That's possible because every user has got their own ledger and data availability is known for each user on where it is, so that we are able to accommodate it. There's no one single ledger. There are many participant-centric ledgers, and so we are able to simultaneously accommodate that. So that's one very real-world matching and hyper-parallel use cases would be a very interesting and very apt use case for MOI and context change.
Okay, thank you so much for answering all those questions. Could you share with us your future plans? So what we can see this year, or maybe a couple?
Yeah, so we already have had 3 testnets. So we plan to have our your beta mainnet is going on right now. We'll have our mainnet in the second half of the year. July is our time frame. And we're also planning to go through a TGG process by the end of this second quarter of this year. So that's the second update. And obviously we have, in the technology roadmap, we have got some plans to have a fully homomorphic encrypted execution environment so that privacy is fully protected. So that's a big one for the next year, which is coming in the roadmap. And obviously some more execution environments. Today, we are just a more Golang-based, Golang and REST-based environment, but then some more client environments we would release in 2026 as well.
Thank you, Anantha, for sharing such details. It's a pleasure. So, Anantha, thank you so much for being here on the call. Wishing you best of luck. It was a pleasure hearing lots of things about your project, and yeah, good luck as well. And yeah, guys, we are finishing this call. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to be the next participant of our call, be sure to check out our form for participation. It's here in the chat. We just shared that. And also there's a feedback form, so feel free to check it out as well. And yeah, I want to say huge thanks to Game Forest and MOI Protocol here for being here on the call and sharing those exciting details. It's been a pleasure. And yeah, thank you so much for coming. See you in 2 days. Cheers.
Okay, guys. Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you. Bye-bye.